Okay, thanks for coming, everyone. My name's Neil Proctor, and this is Why Do You Need a Customer Data Platform, CDP, versus CRM, DMP, and Dear Deirdre. So I'm going to split this into three bits. The first bit is going to be defining what a CDP is, a Customer Data Platform, and how it differs from a DMP. The second bit is going to be going through a project that we did at Hive to implement a CDP. And then the third bit is a little bit on the Salesforce perspective of this area. So actually this is quite good timing because Hive started the CDP journey in 2019. 8 months later, November, I submitted my talk submitted my talk idea to London Calling about CDP. And then 2 months after that, Salesforce bought a CDP. So although we didn't actually use the technology that Salesforce bought, a lot of what I'm talking is very relevant to Salesforce because of the fact they bought Evergage, which is the kind of big commitment to the CDP world. So in terms of positioning, so CDP fits under CRM. So broadly under CRM, you've got sales, service, marketing. And traditionally for sales and service, the Salesforce platform tends to drive a lot of that. Within marketing, you've got Marketing Cloud, which is an email service provider, the ExactTarget acquisition, which obviously is well established within Salesforce. And then you've got a couple of other things under marketing which are playing more of a key role over time, I guess. One is DMP, so Salesforce bought Crux, which is a DMP, and I'll go on to what a DMP is later in the talk. The other CDP, and again, going to go on to exactly what a CDP is a bit later on. But all these different bits fall under the category of MarTech and AdTech. So this is quite a specialist area. Indeed, it's an area full of kind of cool tech vendors. There's actually over 7,000 of them. So it's a really fragmented marketplace, the MarTech and AdTech area. So I think the reason that Salesforce are getting into this space is to try and establish, I guess, obviously a consolidated view with the products they've already got, and probably position more kind of enterprises, the CIO, the CTO, rather than the, I guess, marketing departments. So why do we need a CDP? Well, for me, it's to do with the blind spot. So traditionally, we've got Gwyneth Paltrow there up at the top. She's talking to a call center agent, and that call center agent may be entering some information into Salesforce. And traditionally, when you've got a person talking to a call center agent, and then Salesforce, generally Salesforce is recording a lot of transactional information, what a customer bought, what service interactions the customer has had, and then anything within custom objects. So there's a lot of data being gathered there. And in the traditional marketing sense, and certainly for Hive, where I work, this is the way that we did marketing. Salesforce then integrates with Marketing Cloud, which itself has data extensions and the ability to have a bunch more data, and all the Salesforce data is synced across the Marketing Cloud. And all that data can be used to send communications back to the customer. And predominantly within Marketing Cloud, it's email, because ExactTarget is probably the biggest part of Marketing Cloud at the moment. But in that kind of, and that's traditionally over the years how we've done marketing at Hive, I guess. But there's definitely a blind spot in terms of how the modern consumer interacts, because if you look back at the top of the diagram there, our consumer is often not necessarily talking to an agent as part of in terms of their touch points with the company. They're out using their app, they're using the website, and in Hive's context, they're using devices. So there's a lot of data out there that's been generated off the back of those customer touch points, which traditionally at Hive we've left on the table. We don't really know what's going on. We might have certain point solutions like web analytics, for instance, and create reports, but we're not doing anything automatic off the back of that data. So this is where a customer data platform comes in. So our customers at the bottom there and interacting with those different customer touch points. Each one of those customer touch points is generated data. So within Salesforce, transactional data within the web, they're browsing the Hive camera pages, the Hive active heating pages, certain intent, if you look at the web data. Within the app, they might be using certain features and not using certain features, and the same with the devices. So the promise of a customer data platform is to join all that up and generate one single customer profile, one single customer identity that's effectively tracking that information over those different customer touch points. And actually, most of the modern CDPs extend that to allow you with that data to action that data back into those channels. So to personalize those channels based on what a customer's been doing in any one of those channels. So when you get that right, then you can be, for instance, personalizing the app engagement off the back of what a person's been doing on the web. It can be very powerful, and that middle bit is what we talk about when we talk about CDP, Customer Data Platform. So this is the definition of Customer Data Platform, lots of words, but essentially what I've just said. There's a guy over in the US called David Raab who invented the term Customer Data Platform, and actually it's a fairly recently invented term. You can get a lot of recognition out of inventing these terms, actually, and obviously David has done. If you look at Google Trends, Customer Data Platform has taken off really since 2016. And David Raab actually created something called the Customer Data Platform Institute. All the vendors have kind of hopped on the bandwagon of calling themselves a customer data platform, and it's really ballooned in the market. The other reason, actually, that this has increased in interest is because it's much more technically feasible nowadays to build something which deals with a lot of data, mainly because of AWS. So if you look at actually under the hood of a lot of these customer data platforms, what the vendors are offering, it's a bunch of AWS stuff strung together. So how does a customer data platform differ from a DMP? And what is a DMP? So DMP, Data Management Platform, really informative terminology, this. Now, I couldn't actually find who invented the term data management platform, but the key way in which it differs from a customer data platform is a data management platform is more about advertising, and it's more about advertising to anonymous customers. So if you look at the CDP here, CDP is all about your known customer over your known customer touch points, your own website, your own app, your own devices in HiveSense. So it's all to do with owned media. Whereas the DMP is much more about third-party and second-party data. So when you guys are all going on the web and clicking the green bit to accept consent and all that kind of thing, your data is being collected. Off the back of that, those sources can sell it to companies or marketing agencies. And from that data, they can generate, for instance, a segment of people who are interested in football. But that doesn't necessarily tell you who the person is. There'll be anonymous IDs like browser IDs, things generated off the back of cookies, things like that. But you don't know who the individual is. So that's the key difference between CDP and DMP. And a DMP then, based on those segments, markets out to social media channels in general. So when you're going on Facebook, when you're going on LinkedIn and you're seeing those tailored advertisements back to you, then they've been generated from this kind of anonymous data quite often. And these channels are termed paid media. So, but there's a link between what DMP does and what CDP does, and that is the DMP, so these adverts within those paid media channels, generally push traffic to your owned channels. So you'll see an advert on Facebook, click on it, and it'll go through to your actual, to the website of the person who's advertised. So there's a very close link between those two, but they both serve a different purpose. If you look at the Salesforce world, the DMP that Salesforce have is Crux. CDP, that's Evergage, which is what they've just bought. So I'll talk about the Salesforce perspective in a bit, but those two solutions will be very much behind what Salesforce term their CDP offering. So that's all very complicated and a lot of three-letter acronyms. So I decided to, at this point, validate whether I'm right about all this stuff. And so what I did is I wrote into an agony aunt, the most famous agony aunt in the UK, Dear Deirdre, to validate if I'm actually right about this. Now, for you guys who don't know who Dear Deirdre is, she is the agony aunt for the Sun. Such quality questions as, I want my hubby back, but lover will tell all. Sexy cabin girl showed me the ropes on ferry, so you can help with that if you needed to. Or this one's my favourite. My mum's dog attacked our postman. I tried to help, then one thing that led to another, and now I think I'm pregnant. So I thought maybe she can help validate the difference between all these bits of terminology. So I wrote into her, Hi Deirdre. Actually, I got that a bit wrong. It should have been Dear Deirdre, but never mind. I'm confused. I don't know if I need a CRM, CDP or DMP, or really what the difference is. I feel that unless I sort this out, my wife may leave me. She wants someone with a 360 degree of the world, please help. Regards, Neil. Now, you obviously wouldn't really expect a response from that. That's ridiculous. But she did respond. Hi, Neil, thanks for getting in touch. You say you're confused and fear your wife will leave you unless you can resolve some issues. I wonder if you can explain what the initials you referred to stand for. Indeed, it is confusing. The only reference I can find is to computer language and data processes, so she was kind of getting there. Tell me more about what's troubling you and I will offer some help and advice. All the best, Deirdre. So actually, Deirdre didn't really give me the answer to my question. I actually had another interaction with her again, and she kind of pointed me in the direction of counselling, so I kind of stopped it there. But anyway, that's enough of that. The Hive CDP story. So this is the second part of the talk. Okay, so this is a long one, lots of diagrams, here we go. Right, this started way back in 2018 where we were doing something for Hive called proactive support. Proactive support is all about something's wrong with the device and we want to do something automatically to tell the customer and get them to resolve it themselves. Now, we use Salesforce IoT for that, but quickly realised that it's an interesting product but didn't really scale for our use case. It's definitely more for a manufacturing line with a few robots rather than it's kind of 7 million devices, which is the situation Hive has. So we rebuilt it, and actually this is relevant because the way that we rebuilt proactive support provided some of the foundation for our customer data platform solution. So we rebuilt it we had the same problem of taking a lot of data from devices, and that data traditionally went into something called data platform within Hive, which is a data warehouse team. And we rebuilt it using a bunch of AWS serverless components. So basically using SNS to take in different bits of data from the devices, transform that, store it in DynamoDB to give us some idea of the state of devices, and then a bunch of other AWS things to eventually then, via Salesforce, either send out an email to a customer saying, your hub is offline, you can do X, Y, Z, or raise a case for an agent automatically to do something about it. So that was how we rebuilt proactive support. And slightly after that, I had this kind of CDP vision. And we didn't actually call it CDP at the time, we called it data-driven engagement. And the challenge here was basically back to what I was talking about with CDP there, where we, at the bottom of the diagram, we had a bunch of data we wanted to do something with. At the top, we had our channels, but we were missing something in the middle. Now, we already had our pink box, which is the proactive support thing, but we had an idea as well of kind of gathering from our data platform all the data that's useful for marketing in a single place, that's the green box, and then having some kind of decision rules engine on the top of it, that's the blue box. But we didn't know what we were going to use for this, so we kind of toyed around with different potential solutions, and as I alluded to before, what we did with proactive support informed this to some extent. So again, starting with data platform, we ingested data from the mobile app, the web, and the devices to work out to kind of gather in an aggregated form what a customer's doing across those things. AWS serverless again, very similar pattern to what we saw before. DynamoDB is a staging area, but this time, as opposed to a staging area for what a device is doing, whether a device is online, offline, that kind of stuff, this was going to be a staging area for aggregated information in terms of what a customer's using within the app, what they're doing within the web, and possibly some more kind of proactive support information in there as well. But this is much more for the purpose of marketing. Again, Lambda, SNS, SQS, and where they eventually pointed out in this context was, or is, a solution called Boxever. So DynamoDB was our single customer view, getting all that data, making sense of it and aggregating it up. And then Boxever is our rules engine. And you can think of Boxever as a very similar solution to Evergage. So at the time when we procured Boxever, Salesforce didn't really have much of a story in this area. But Evergage is very much this kind of thing. So with Boxever, we, on a very regular basis, push data into Boxever. and I'll go through what that data is in a second. And then Boxever, across our different channels, whether it's web, app, email, or call center, personalizes those channels based on data about that individual. And that little segment thing to the right there, because Boxever knows more than anything else about the customer, then that's where we segment. What we're trying to move away from is any individual channel knowing a lot about the customer, because it can't share it with the other channels. So we try and centralize that within one solution, and that solution's Boxever. Another key point actually about the solution that we've got, so if you look at the web and the app, is the decisioning comes from Boxever. So Boxever, when someone logs into the app, for instance, might decide, okay, the most relevant products to offer a person next are sensor, HiFob 360, and external camera, and push that back to the app. But of course the app needs something to display as well. It needs some pictures, some text. And for that we use a headless CMS called Contentful. So this is quite a good model, because if we want to change the decisioning about what we're offering to a customer in any one of our channels, we do that within Boxever. If we want to change a picture or some text, we can do that within Contentful without necessarily needing a developer. And that was one of the key principles about this architecture. And of course, in parallel, so we had this grand plan about what the architecture was going to look like, but we needed, obviously, to work out what data we needed, what the use cases were going to be. So very early on, almost when we created that first diagram that I showed, we were defining the use cases and then working backwards to see what data we needed. We generate so much data within Hive, but a lot of it isn't useful. Some of it is. One example of something that is very useful is the product holding of a customer. Because all the products are connected, then we have visibility of that. And if we want to sell someone, or if someone, say, has got 7 cameras, it might not make sense to offer them another camera. So we use that data as well as a lot of other data as part of our marketing decisioning. Other examples of data, so I talked about website, also community. So via the community tracking, we can tell if someone's got a customer support issue. App feature usage. When I say app feature usage, this is, are people using schedules? Are people using Boost or Actions? If they're not using those features, then we really want to promote those features to them, potentially through any one of those channels. Propensity scores, so these are kind of more data science-y things that are done within kind of by the data scientists at Hive to say if someone's got a high propensity to buy a camera next or a sensor next, etc., based on their past history. Product holdings, talked about that. What bundles, subscriptions, orders they've got, NPS score. And basically through the architecture we can push through any further data attributes. Because we're kind of dealing with a NoSQL schema, well, no schema really within DynamoDB, then actually adding on data attributes is relatively easy. So the example in terms of email use case that we just got live last week actually is abandoned baskets. So someone leaves a product in their basket, Boxever decides to kind of try and push them back to the basket online, but also what other complementary products might we want to offer to them as well. The web use case, so the hero banner and the tiles underneath flex dynamically depending on, again, data we know about a customer. Within the app, so within web and app, they will probably go live next month. Within the app, we've got an offers section which is personalised to that customer. And if we look under the hood at all of that and look at kind of the UI of Boxever, and again, Evergage is very similar in the Salesforce context, it's relatively kind of drag and drop in terms of targeting these things. So you can create a segment, for instance, all customers without any Hive lights who've been browsing the lights pages in the last 10 days, bit of intent there, and then push out some emails or personalize the web in accordance to that. And if you look at the abandoned basket, the way that that's represented within Boxever, again, very visual. And again, Evergage is very, very similar in this respect. But it gives you a central place where a marketing person can view what's going on. There's a bunch of analytics in there as well. But also that person, in combination with someone a bit more technical, can A/B test rules and introduce new rules, new kind of prioritized offers, all that kind of thing without needing to do it in each of the channels. And finally, one of the key things that we did to enable this as well as the tech was we changed the way our teams work a little bit. When you're doing this kind of project, you realize that the tech kind of does what it does, but you're having to, you need a bit of app resource, you need someone from web, you need someone from email. So we used to have these teams very segmented in that we had Salesforce, email, web, Hive app, data, very segmented. And what we did actually at the start of this project is we had a principle of creating a squad which is a combination of those people on a stand-up every day within their own sprint, and a product owner at the head of that squad who is prioritizing what we do across those different capabilities, so that we're not trying to prioritize the work in the different teams, because it would just have taken forever. So I think that's a key principle a key org principle when delivering this kind of thing. So Salesforce and CDP, this is the last little bit here. Where are they at? So the Salesforce vision actually is, so there's a bit of talk about combining marketing tech and ad tech, so combining CDP and DMP, and some people have termed it mad tech. So it's kind of have your cake and eat it too. So you've got the data that you know about, you've got anonymous segments, can you kind of combine those, so augment your known data with attributes from anonymous segments, that kind of thing. And actually, Salesforce have this overall diagram, which there's no way I'm going to go through at the moment. There's a blog post on it, which came out maybe a few months ago. And this kind of spells out their vision of this whole space. And there's a lot underneath this. And I've actually, as recently as yesterday, was talking to Salesforce about this. They've got a really ambitious vision, which I think is definitely along the right lines in terms of defining the role of a DMP and CDP and connecting up the various acquisitions they've got to deliver this. So you can imagine underneath this diagram, there's Crux, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, of course Evergage, which they recently bought. And as with all these things, the main challenge for Salesforce is going to be connecting up these disparate things so that they work together well. But from what I've seen, they're definitely along the right lines. I wish they'd have started this journey 2 years ago so that I could have hopped on it then. But I don't think, even with this kind of architecture, you get away from that upstream need to have something like, certainly in our context, something like AWS doing the heavy data processing, because unless you refine that data, you end up pumping a lot of data and spending a lot of money on a vendor purchase solution. But anyway, if you want to know more about that, contact your Salesforce exec, I guess. And the final thing that I just want to talk about is a thank you to everyone who was involved in everything that I've talked about, because I literally did none of the work. I took diagrams from other people, apart from maybe one of them. And we should have all this delivered by next month. And yeah, just a big shout out to all these people. So that's everything. Any questions?
Yeah, one question from my side. So you obviously operate on a really large scale here, so millions, like 7 million or so devices, so there's lots of events being fired.
Yeah.
What's sort of the scale where you should start thinking about like a CDP? Is there a certain limit, a number of devices or records or events or so?
Well, I think you need to start thinking about CDP if you've got a digital presence, if you've got an app or web presence, because I think it's a bit less about scale, it's more about handling and interpreting that kind of event data. And the CDP is really good at doing that out of the box. So I think if you've got an app or a website, I think when you're kind of at a smallish scale, maybe up to 100,000 customers, then there's probably tactical solutions that you can use. And you can actually do a lot on AWS, even without buying a CDP. But I think when you get to the scale that we're at, if we tried to do everything that a CDP does, a vendor CDP does on AWS, we would just be building too much stuff. So yeah, I would say, when you're pushing kind of past 100,000 customers, you've got digital channels, then that's when you want to start thinking about it. Okay, I think we're done. Thank you very much, audience.